Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
Today we are talking about the power of community. And when it comes to Tampa Bay, there's nobody better at bringing us all together than WWE Global Ambassador, philanthropist, and all-around great guy, Thaddeus Bullard, a.k.a. Titus O'Neill, who is the author of There Is No Such Thing as a Bad Kid. Titus, welcome to Bloom Health Club.
Thank you for having me.
So this is so awesome to have you as a guest. I met you and got to really know you right before the start of the pandemic. And I met you in a place where you were turning around a failing school here in Tampa Bay, but your history with us goes way deeper than that. You started to really know your transformation as a human being when you were just a young child.
Right, yeah. So, I went to the Florida Sheriff's Youth Ranches and the Boys Ranch in particular, up in Live Oak, Florida. And I went there at 12 years old as a kid. I was labeled a kid that would be dead or in jail by the time I was 16. And, I believed that for a greater part of my young adult life. I'm a product of a rape. My mother was raped at 11. Had me at the age of 12. I've been homeless. I've gone from family member to family members' couches. I've slept in cars. I've done it all. And so once I got to the Boys Ranch and had this conversation at 12 years old that, there is no such thing as a bad kid, which is why the title is what it was. I heard that at a time in which I was actually a really bad kid. I used to get into fights all the time, and I had signed a contract that I wouldn't get into another fight, or otherwise I would be sent back home to Boynton Beach, Florida, which is where I'm originally from. And 30 minutes after I got into a fight, 30 minutes after I signed a contract, I got into another fight. Meeting was held that I would be sent back home to the Florida. I was sent back home to Boynton Beach, and a white guy by the name of Pat Minogue, who was the Boys Ranch director at the time, called me into the room and he said, "Why do you think you get into trouble all the time?" And I said, "I don't know, man. I'm just a bad kid. I had my head down." And he said, "Pick your head up." And he said, "There's no such thing as a bad kid." And I looked at him and I said, "How can you say that? I've been told I'll be dead or in jail by the time I was 16, that I'll never graduate from high school," which at that point, nobody in my family had graduated from high school. I'm too dumb to go to college, too uncoordinated to play sports. The list went on and on. And he said, "I'm not going to give you the answer to that because I truly believe you're going to turn things around and you're going to find that answer out for yourself. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you something and I want you to believe it." He said, "I love you and I believe in you." And at that time, a lot of people had told me that they loved me and then turn around and abuse me, beat me, curse me, etc. But nobody had ever told me that they believed that I can do anything. It was always complete opposite, what I can't do, what I'll never do. And it was that moment that I realized I need to start believing in myself. I've always had a very rebellious spirit. Even to this day, you can't tell me what can't be done. And my life really took a turn to be better because of my mindset, and having this village of people around me that were accessible to me to help me. And these people this pool of donors that were donating to the Florida Sheriff Youth Ranches blindly, not knowing the kids' names, very rarely meeting them. They're just writing a check to a institution that they believe in. And so my life today is not about being successful. It's really about being significant. And it was a time that at the Boys Ranch, I went to the Boys Ranch being very, very insignificant in a lot of people's eyes and written off for dead. And becoming the first person to graduate from my family in high school, becoming the first person to go to college and graduate at the University of Florida and play football under Coach Spurrier and have him unretire his jersey for me to wear at Florida. Being in the University of Florida Hall of Fame, being the vice president of student government at the University of Florida, which is why I don't like politics to this day. A lot of the people that work with me at the University of Florida in student government are still in politics and in very high positions. And for me, I understand that there's a political process that has to happen. But I also understand that there's a people process that's more important. And for me, people who got me into this position that I'm in, people from all walks of life, black, white, gay, straight, lesbian, Republican, Democrat, independents, doesn't matter. And so I could care less about a person's title. I really want to care about a person's character, because people of character helped put me into this position to be a man of character and be a man that if I say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And as outrageous as it may sound sometimes, if I tell people, yeah, I want to give away 30,000 backpacks at Raymond James Stadium, well, it's never been done, Thaddeus. How are you going to do that? Don't worry about how I'm going to do it. Are you in or are you out? You know, it's going to get done whether you want to participate or not. Oh, you want to give away 15,000 gifts at Raymond James Stadium during the holiday season. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have free food and games and et cetera. It's never been done. I don't care. It's going to get done again. And here we are, you know, 10 years or 15 years with the Joy of Giving holiday, and we've impacted last year with a partnership with Metropolitan Ministries, 37,000 families in 6 different counties with food and gifts from November all the way through December, and toys and clothes. So you can't really tell me at this point in my life like what can't be done. And I think a lot of that bleeds off into the people that are around me. That's why we can get 500 volunteers to come and help stuff 30,000 backpacks. That's why we can get 500 volunteers to be out in the hot sun, because they can see the vision and they can see it come to life each and every time, and they're happy to be a part of that. If I can spark that in people doing things at schools, doing things in their respective parts of the Tampa Bay area communities, in their neighborhoods, for people, you know, we have this bravado that America is the greatest country in the world. And as an African American in America, I disagree. And that has traveled the world. I disagree with that in a lot of cases. America is the country with the greatest amount of opportunity. People come from other countries to get an education here that they would not normally be able to get. They come here to start a business here they would not be able to get. If we were the greatest country in the world, we wouldn't lead the world in mass incarcerations, mass shootings, be almost dead last in education, and so many other factors that we're just not very good at. The only time I think that we are truly great is in times of tragedy, unfortunately. And a hurricane hits, you know, we see people sending resources and having drives and clothes and everything else to help people. And then 2 weeks later, they're right back being, you know, divisive and everything else in between. Or mass shooting happens and it's trending for 3 or 4 days, and then we go right back to our pockets of the world and continue on as if nothing ever happened. You know, I always say if America wants to be the greatest country in the world, we got to start by being the greatest people in the world. And that starts with myself, starts with my family, starts with what I do with my family. And then hopefully how we treat other people, how I treat you, and how you treat the next person, how you treat the next person, cultivates this culture of greatness for everyone.
You know, and I'm joined by my co-host, Brody Waddell, who is the producer and digital reporter at BloomTampaBay.com. And Brody, this is something that I've always wondered when I met Titus for the first time. I thought, man, this guy comes with so much star power. And he's this like WWE superstar, and like everybody's eyes are glazed. Then I got to know him, and I realized, no, this is the guy that is like, hey, Gail, want to come over at Sly Middle School and help me move desks around? Yeah. And we were loading. And like the minute I met him, I'm like, what is it about him that just makes me want to do more? And I like to consider myself part of the community. This is where I was born and raised. I want to give back, but I'm like, I want to do more. I want to help. I want to help. And the more time you spend around him, the more you realize that it's almost like he's created a following.
Right. Like that energy, you kind of just make other people want to rise to the occasion as well, huh?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm a very competitive person, always have been on winning teams. I've never been on a losing team my entire life. The one constant and consistent thing that winning teams possess is culture. And, you know, I like to set culture. I like to set expectations. I don't care if you're a CEO or, you know, a substitute teacher. You know, when it's time to work, it's time to work. And I can't be that person out here telling, hey, you go do this, you go do that, you go do this. And meanwhile, I'm sitting down, you know, drinking iced tea. You know what I mean? I'm sweating harder than everybody out there because I want to lead by example.
Yeah.
And when you have leaders in any walk of life, that you see them out there doing the work, in the trenches with you, it makes you be like, man, this guy really doesn't have to be out here. Like, I could be on a plane somewhere every single weekend, every single day of the week if I want to. When I'm not traveling with WWE, when I'm not speaking somewhere or whatever, like I have access to have a really, really good life, and I do still have a great life. You know, I go to concerts, I go to plays, I take my kids, we fly places, we do this and do that. But at the end of the day, I feel like the only reason why I'm in this position is because God can trust me with this platform. He can trust me with the resources. And I've proven over and over again, like, I'm going to be obedient to what God tells me to do. I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to get anybody else to be perfect. I'm not seeking perfection. I'm just trying to be the best version of who God called me to be. And if I can do something that triggers someone else to say, man, like, if that guy's doing all this, I gotta have, and he's got this on his plate, he's got restaurants, he's got, school, he's got all these things. Man, I feel like, I've had people that are very successful, like, man, I feel like I'm sorry as I don't know what. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like a slacker.
Yeah. It's like the guy gets up at 4 o'clock and goes to work out at 5, does 3 workouts before anybody's even out of the bed. And it's like, I'm not driven by a perception of who I am. And I think a lot of times when people get into certain spotlights, they feel like they have to be a certain way all the time. I'm driven by the fact that, like, I know for a fact I'm the product of a rape. I'm not even supposed to be here. God found some people that thought it was important enough to invest in me and my mom and my brothers to get us to a point where we can have a chance. And once I got that chance, I mean, we're off to the races, And so my thing with community is, like, I just want to give people a chance, like who I'm serving and who I'm recruiting to serve. Give them a chance, because their life may be changed just by the fact that they say, man, I didn't realize things were this bad over here. Now all of a sudden we have not just me as an advocate, we got 25 people over here that are advocates for change. And we have 25 people over here that are advocates for change in this area. You hear that whole saying that, it only takes a spark to start a wildfire. Well, I just hope that when I'm dead and gone, that I've started enough wildfires to burn down a lot of barriers and bridges that have, created divisiveness and created strife amongst people, when at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. I want my family to be healthy. You want your family to be healthy. You want schools to be great. When you have children, you want your kids to be able to go to a great school. You won't have to send them 45 minutes away from your house in order for them to get a good education. You want roads to be good, or great. I still don't understand. This is a shot at the people in South Tampa, but how they pay all that money and the roads still.
Yeah, we got all the potholes here.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Titus, let's talk a little bit more about the school that you turned around, because part of what I was saying earlier to Brody is that I'm in awe of what you do, considering who you are. And if people of stature and, with all this notoriety, if each of us could just take a single page out of your book, the world would be a better place. And one day you were driving by a notoriously failing school in Hillsborough County, Sly Middle School, which is now Sly Middle Magnet School. It also shares your name now. And you just made the decision to change not just the facade of the school, the desk, the artificial turf for the kids to play football, their surroundings, the murals, to make it look beautiful. But you also made it feel beautiful, because you brought in structure, you brought in discipline, you brought in love, you brought in community. Walk us through how you were able to get that done, because that was a very quick turnaround of you changing the face of a failing school.
Well, I definitely would not be able to do it without the help of Hillsborough County School Board and the school district. It's great. One thing is to have a vision about something. It's another thing to be able to actually execute it. And it's not just me. It's, my Bullard Family Foundation executive director, board of directors, It's the Hillsborough County School Board members. It's the teachers, the staff, the principals, the students, all just trying to move in the same direction. And, essentially, obviously we have corporate partners that have jumped on and helped significantly make this work a lot easier to come into fruition in regards to, like you say, the physical look of the school alone. My kids go to Berkeley Prep. I pay a lot of money for them to go to school. And they have opportunities there and access to things there that a lot of kids don't have. Well, I come from this same background of these kids. This is the sixth highest zip code for children living in poverty in the entire state of Florida. 24% high school graduation rate in this zip code. So being able to provide not only hope, but also understanding that, like, I've helped so many kids that come from that same zip code go to a place like Academy Prep, and then from Academy Prep they go to a Jesuit or to a Berkeley Prep or to a Tampa Catholic or Academy of the Holy Names, etc. They stay in this private school setting that allows them to go on and become the first people in their family to graduate from high school and the first people to go to college and graduate from college. Well, I feel like in public school we've taken so much money away in so many different ways from a political standpoint that, like, these same kids do have the same talent. They just need more resources. These teachers are very, very talented. They just need more resources. And I wanted to make this place a place that's fun for teachers to come work, a place that's fun for students to come and learn and to be a part of things and to know that they're going to get the best of the best. And, it's kind of like when the Patriots were winning Super Bowls, right? They get off the bus and they're the most hated team in America, aside from the Cowboys. And the Cowboys didn't really have a reason to be hated because they wasn't winning nothing. Yeah. The Patriots were winning with Tom Brady, and they embraced that role of the bad guy. But you can call us whatever you want, but we're gonna win. And that's the mentality that I want to have with these students and these teachers at the school. Like, hey, y'all can get mad at us because we got a clothing closet and we got a food pantry on, we got a color, you can get mad. We got a turf field. We're only middle school and the public's middle school in the entire school district with a turf field. Yeah. You can get mad at us because we have a view volume screen. They can get mad at us for whatever they want, but at the end of the day, our concern is winning. Making sure that we are turning the tide for these students, giving them the best opportunity to advance in so many ways, from their mental health to their academic performance, to their sports and physical performance. Tampa General is getting ready to make a huge investment in with me at the school and revamping our medical magnet program with the hopes that same thing that I want to do overall is we want to get it right here and then take it to a high school, so that these kids can have something to transition into there. There's only one me. But I do hope the work that's being done over there and then the results after 2 or 3 years yield those results to have somebody else raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do that same thing over here. And at least we have somewhat of a blueprint. But at the end of the day, they got to carry out the vision that they see for that area and for that school.
Do you have questions?
I do have a few questions. I have some based around wrestling, but also a couple around sort of like being a role model for these young boys and sort of like modern masculinity. So I don't know which one you would prefer to speak on because they're both interesting to me.
Doesn't bother me.
But I would say, like, how do you, like, especially with young boys, I feel like they need that energy needs to be redirected in a positive way, which I feel like you probably do. How do you define sort of in this new age being like a good man and balancing being strong and, being proud of that with also being like emotionally vulnerable and not like being chaotic in that energy?
Yeah, I think, my sons have helped me become a better version of myself. I can't raise my children the way that I was raised. Kids nowadays need real conversations, and the old days of, kid asking a question and they say, well, why can't I do something? And the parent says, because I said so. Well, you know, because you said so, leads your son or your daughter to go and find out the same question or answer that may not be beneficial to them. And now you're bailing your kid out of jail, or you're going to visit them at the hospital or in a morgue. And so I think most kids today, we don't give kids credit enough for how smart they actually are, how street smart they really are. And they can smell BS from a mile away, you know. Don't just be real with people, you know, and I've done a very good job of doing that. You know, I'm fully transparent with folks. Everyone always knows where they stand with me. And so my kids can have that example, and then I want to give that same example to other kids. And I think any parent or adult figure has to at some point look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, you know, before I go and go off on my son about making a stupid mistake, let me reflect back to when I was their age and how many stupid mistakes I made. And, you know, I had one of my coworkers from WWE call me, and just this past week, and he wanted to put hands on his kid because he made a huge mistake after huge mistake. And I was like, you know, that's the complete opposite thing of what you need to do at this point right now. You know, your son's 17 years old, and the reality is they watched you make a few mistakes openly and in public, and embarrassing in some cases. This would be the great time to say, hey, you know, you messed up, right? You know, and look at them, and they already know they messed up, but look at them, you know, you messed up, right? But you know what the crazy part about it is? I messed up too. And because I messed up, at this point right now, all I want to do is help you through this. That approach will unlock, I think, a whole nother level of that relationship with their child, as opposed to yelling. I mean, you can yell. I used to get whoopings, man. I got whooping so much, you know, as a kid. Like, I was like, yeah, all right, come on, I already know I'm getting a whooping, you know. And it doesn't do anything after a certain period of time, you know. But loving, you know, these kids, and yeah, you can be disciplined, you can take stuff away and all that stuff, but you got to give them a reason. And also, to me, a goal, like I always tell my Caucasian friends, they negotiate with their kids way too much. You know, all right, Billy, you know, it's time to go to bed. If you go to bed, we're going to do something. No, Billy, it's time to take your ass to bed, period. You know, like, you're the adult. You don't try to be their friend until they're 21. You know, prior to that, you're the parent. And I'm seeing, even with obviously working in this school, you got a lot of teachers that are having the parents too. And the adults are needing to be parented too. And I just think that being a role model today is more about transparency and realness than it is about your status. You know, yeah, you can have 7 million followers on Instagram and make a lot of money and this and that, but that doesn't make you a role model. You know, it's really how you help people move in the right direction. And some people are, you know, they do it by their actions. Some people do it by their words. Some people do it by both. I take pride in being able to do it in all facets. But if I'm not a good father, like, there's no way that I'm going to be in a position to be a great leader. To me, I think being a father has helped me be a better leader, because I've learned how to communicate with people differently. My youngest son is much different than my oldest son, but they're both great kids. But I have to communicate with them differently. I have to communicate with my daughter a lot differently than I have to communicate with my sons. Even though they're all like stud athletes, they still are different. And that alone is an opportunity for me to become a better man in regards to how I communicate with people.
Right. So what stage in your life did you sort of transition from focusing your energy on yourself to like putting it out? Was there like a certain point? What do you expect from other people doing that too? Should they have their own house in order before they try to go and do something like you are? Or?
I think everybody's journey is different, you know. Sometimes tragedy makes people better. The loss of a family member, the loss of a job, the loss of a home, it makes them put things into a different perspective, which ultimately, in some cases, helps them become better people. It's crazy how, like, my worst moments have helped me become a better person. And I think that having faith, whatever faith you practice, my faith is in God, and some people's faith is in Allah, and some people's faith is in Buddha or whoever. I think having some type of faith helps lead you to understand that, like, there's a purpose for me being here. There's a purpose on my life, and I need to try to access resources and people that can help me find that purpose. Because I've seen people from 17 years old to 70 years old repackaging themselves, trying to figure out what is, what's my purpose now in life. You hear people all the time talk about a midlife crisis. I'm hearing 21-year-olds talking about they're having a midlife crisis right now, and I'm like, dude, just get a job. You know what I mean? Like, just go to work. You won't feel that same way. But I think ultimately for me, tragedy has helped. My biggest tests have turned into my biggest testimonies. My biggest messes have turned into my greatest messages. And it's a lot has to do with perspective. Like, I grew up poor, so I know I'll never go back to that day. But I can see when other people are in certain situations or similar situations that I was, I can sympathize and empathize, and then also be able to say, hey, well, this is what I think. And they'll value it, because it's like, I had no idea you slept in cars. I had no idea you were homeless. I had no idea you were told you'll be dead or in jail by the time you were 16. That's that transparency that I'm talking about, is in regards to, like, some people, they get to a certain level and then they almost want to forget about where they came from. Right. And they just live in this new lifestyle, and they don't want to talk about X, Y, and Z, or they get married, remarried, and they don't want to talk about, what they went through with their divorce, and yet, I'm so happy now. Yeah, but there was a point where you were not happy. And there's somebody out there that you can help get through their period of time where they're going through a divorce, or they're going through a separation, or whatever. And you got to be in tune with the spirit. And I think having faith, again, leads us to understanding how we should be with people.
I know you're a busy man. I have one last question that I wanted to ask you that always resonated with me when I first met you and I saw you interacting with all the kids at Sly, and that was the mindset of a lot of kids, and probably adults alike, are, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve this, or I don't deserve that, because they've never gotten it. But you come in and you're like, you do deserve this. You deserve the turf. You deserve being able to, do video games, maybe for a living one day. Like, you expose children to so much. You should be able to pick up a tennis racket and walk out on a court. Like, you come in with a mindset, and I think not having the right mindset is what sets us back in life.
Yes, 100%. Mindset is everything. A lot of times people go into situations and say, hey, what's wrong with that kid? Or, hey, what's wrong with that person? Nobody ever really says what happened to that person, because if you find out what happened, then you can find out why certain things are wrong with that person, and then that's when you can actually fix them. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's the mindset. Like you say, people say, I surprise folks sometimes when I'm like, hey, I bought you guys the teacher's lunch today, and it's like, oh, you didn't have to do that. It's like, I know I didn't have to do it, but you deserve it, Yeah. It's like, it makes somebody feel like, they are worth more than what the situation or the circumstance shows them, I put kids on private planes. We put 7 kids on a plane to go to Bar Harbor, Maine this summer, and they stayed up there for 4 days, and the first time having lobster, first time going on a hike, first time going bike riding, first time any of them been on a plane at all. Probably scarred them for the rest of their life because they went private. So, but we take kids to Bucks games, on away games. I believe that exposure leads to expansion. That's what got me to the point where I'm at right now. I've seen so much around the world. Like, there's nowhere I've never been. Whereas when I was a kid, I wanted to go to 2 places, Atlanta and Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. because that's where the safety patrols, which were the good kids, they always had that trip to Washington, D.C. And then Atlanta because I thought that's where all the rich black people lived at, so I wanted to go see how they were living.
Right.
But now I've gone every continent. I've seen every wonder of the world, and if I can bring a little piece of that here and there to this community, I am more than happy to do so.
Nice.
Well, you definitely, Titus, have made Tampa Bay a much better place to live. It's an honor to know you and to spread the word about what you're doing because you do so many great things. I mean, every time I talk to you, I always think to myself, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more I want to share with people, but we appreciate you joining us in the Bloom Health Club.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pretty cool space, too.
Yeah, isn't it cool?
It is, right?
And you can always, if you didn't hear this live, you can always follow us on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. We are there. Brody, as always, I love working with you.
Yeah, same. Thanks
Appreciate
so much.
you, man.
Yep.
You're on your way, kid.
Thanks. I hope so. All right. See you, everybody.